Look, up in the sky, it's an immigrant. So James Gunn gave an interview to the London Times about his upcoming reboot of the Superman franchise, and it has been a source of a lot of sturm and drang. James Gunn, some people will take offense at my new Superman. The director reveals why his superhero reboot has jokes, politics, and is only 2 hours long. He's the Man of Steel the world needs now. So just some highlights from it. Yes, it's about politics, Gunn says. Now, to be clear, he's not referring to the whole movie. He says the most daring choice he made was Lois and Clark have a 10-minute conversation. Some of that was in one of the trailers about the morality of what he does.
There was a scene where Superman shoots up in MacArthur Park, but they took that out. That was too on the nose.
And he has to use a kryptonite needle.
Yeah.
Yes, it's about politics, Gunn says, but on another level, it's about morality. Do you never kill no matter what, which is what Superman believes, or do you have some balance, as Lois believes? It's really about their relationship and the way different opinions on basic moral beliefs can tear two people apart. And he goes on later to say, I mean, Superman is the story of America, Gunn says. This is what's really got the chuds upset. An immigrant that came from other places and populated the country. But for me, it is mostly a story that says basic human kindness is a value and is something we have lost, unquote. I ask if he has considered how differently the film might play in, say, Blue State, New York, a.k.a. Metropolis. He's wrong about that. It's really Chicago. Gotham is New York, but okay. And Kansas, where Kent grew up. Yes, it plays differently, Gunn admits, but it's about human kindness, and obviously there will be jerks out there who are just not kind and will take it as offensive just because it is about kindness, but screw them. And later on, he says, this Superman does seem to come at a particular time when people are feeling a loss of hope in other people's goodness. Gunn adds, I'm telling a story about a guy who is uniquely good and that feels needed now because there is a meanness that has emerged due to cultural figures being mean online. Okay, so hey, he didn't say people in red states are going to hate it. He said there are some jerks who are, yeah, it'll play differently in different regions, but he doesn't say the whole region is going to hate this movie. He says some jerks are going to be nasty. At another point in the interview, he talks about how he released a video of children coming up to David Corn's sweat and him high-fiving them, and people saying, oh, now Superman's a pussy. So, like, why would you not want Superman to be kind? Like, why would you not want children to like Superman? So, of course, the usual suspects, the nerd channels, really ran with this. And hey, who could blame them? They got to eat. They're running out of road pretty quickly. Ironheart just dropped. That's one of the last projects of its kind in the pipeline. They're going to have to try to get by on their talent, and most of them don't have enough to do that. Superman director slams Red State fans. You just heard what he said. Did he slam Red State fans? No, he didn't. He said it'll probably play differently. There will be some jerks. It's political. F you. He did not say that.
Did not say that.
No.
You must be almost 30. Have you ever kissed a girl?
Yeah.
So this was really outstanding. So on Fox, Kellyanne Conway and Jesse Waters offered their opinion of the interview.
Yankees at Mets game yesterday at Citi Field. Go Yanks. And you should see the people sitting for the national anthem for God Bless America. It's really just, I can't believe that we've come down to that. And I don't know, we don't go to the movie theater to be lectured to and to have somebody throw their ideology onto us. I wonder if it'll be successful.
You know what it says on his cape? MS-13.
Is it superimposed or it actually says that? It is super. Just on the knuckles. One more thing is up next.
Okay, so to be clear, once again, He said it's about politics in a very specific context, about a 10-minute conversation that's not even about these kinds of culture war things. It's about the morality of whether you kill or don't kill, whether it's appropriate for him to get involved in stopping wars and that this is a theme that's been in the Superman comics for a very long time. Like, does he have the right to insert himself into certain situations in that way? And what are the moral lines about violence? And regarding the immigration, which is really what they've been getting very upset about, that is inherent to the story. Superman was created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, two Jewish teenagers. They were teenagers when they created Superman. First generation children of immigrants in New York City. That has always been a part of the Superman story. It's not something that was there at the beginning, but then got forgotten about. Here's a clip from Smallville.
I'm an illegal immigrant, Mom. You've been harboring me for over 17 years.
Your situation was entirely different. We had to protect you.
And I need to protect Javier. If I don't defend him, who will?
Okay. Here is Zack Snyder when Justice League was released in 2017, talking without stirring up any controversy about the well-known fact that Superman is an immigrant story written by the children of immigrants.
I like that because I think that the immigrant story, I mean, clearly that's kind of what he's about, you know. He's like, he's come to Earth, and maybe that's a metaphor for America or a metaphor for a sort of Western civilization or even just the modern world. And he has to find his place in it. And regardless of what gifts he's offering to the world, and how he wants to not only fit in, but also to make it better, he still could be met with resistance, and he still could be sort of looked at like an outsider, and all the sort of things that cause him, pain, and where his real struggle comes from. And I think that really, in a lot of ways, Superman is like, to me, I think that because he is an outsider who wants to belong and wants to be part of a family and part of a society, and because he does, like I said, have so much to offer, I think that he does tend to me, and for me as well, I think that he speaks a lot of times to people who are slightly disenfranchised or who aren't 100% appreciated necessarily for the gifts that they have.
Okay, so this didn't stir up any controversy when he said this. Again, it's long been understood to be central to the Superman mythos. Here's End Wokeness. Hollywood literally never learns. And MK Toon responds, they know Superman has always been an immigrant, right?
Yeah.
Shay Serrano. The MAGA idiots realizing Superman is an immigrant is fucking hilarious. Well, at least one graffiti artist in Chicago understood that Superman is an immigrant and did this lovely mural of Superman taking on ice. Here's James Gunn. He was asked at one of the red carpet events what he thought about this pushback.
Your brother talked about Superman being an immigrant, and now MAGA is already upset that he's called Superman an immigrant. I wanted to get your reaction.
My reaction to that is that it is exactly what the movie is about. I think that, we support our people, we love our immigrants. Yes, Superman is an immigrant, and yes, the people that we support in this country are immigrants, and if you don't like that, then you're not American. People who say no to immigrants are against the American way. They're against what the American dream is all about.
Truth, justice, and the American way.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, and here's Ben Shapiro with his pitch for a Superman versus Zoran Mamdani issue in the DC universe.
And the original is very much about how the values of America are farm bred and farm born. Right? His moral center, his moral compass, Superman, is on the farm from his parents. That's why he takes the name Clark Kent. He's an immigrant who assimilates to American values and then brings those classic American values to the big city, where he has to use them to defend the big city from enemies, foreign and domestic. I mean, the original Superman is literally punching Hitler in the face. In the comics, he literally punches Hitler in the face. So, the attempt to separate Superman off from America is just a demonstration by the cultural left of how much they dislike America. And that's no shock, because when you take that over into the political sphere, full scale, what you end up is a different kind of immigrant, like the guy who may be the next mayor of New York, Zoran Mamdani. So, if you have a choice between immigrants who come to the United States, yes, on alien spacecraft, and land, and then are integrated into America and imbibe from the wellspring of American values, or Zoran Mamdani, you should pick Superman, because Zoran Mamdani is a disaster area. This guy is likely to be the next mayor of New York.
They had Superman versus Muhammad Ali, so why not?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Why not? Superman versus Zoran Mamdani. So Ben Shapiro there obviously has no idea what the fuck he's talking about. Tries to present the idea that Superman basically is right wing, that he has his vision, Shapiro's vision of heartland values versus the decadence of the urban environment, and he's the good immigrant who assimilates versus the Zoran Mamdani dangerous immigrant. Just insane. So here's an issue of Superman where he points out, as he's protecting refugees, that he is here illegally. The soldier says, "You don't understand, Superman. These refugees are in our country illegally," to which he responds, "So am I." There was actually an issue of Superman where he fights the Ku Klux Klan. Now, for anyone who's going to say, well, that's because the woke writers took over and they put that in there, but that's not what he originally was. Actually, that is very much what Superman originally was, and more so. Remember, Superman was created during the Great Depression. The original run of Superman by Siegel and Schuster usually was about Clark Kent uncovering some social ill and then sending in his Superman persona to beat the shit out of everybody. So his villains were not super villains. That came later. He would fight corrupt politicians. He would fight chain gang bosses. There was a run of Superman where he tore down the slums and fought the cops and the army, blaming the slums for a preponderance of juvenile delinquency. Little bit about that. The author didn't take credit for this article, but it was very good. It's in a page called "Too Busy Thinking About My Comics." In what's now known as Superman in the Slums, the story's catharsis relies on its star defeating American troops while flattening large and decayed swaths of urban real estate, even as U.S. Army soldiers fix bayonets and charge at him, even as a squadron of aerial bombers flies to the attack. Superman determinedly hauls down filthy, crime-infested slums. The implication was clear. Key sections of the American state, along with powerful interests in American society, were knowingly or not in cahoots with the enemies of the American people. In the face of a social order that simply would not act to defend its most vulnerable citizens, violent and sweeping change would simply have to be forced through. So yes, folks, Superman, as originally conceived, was basically a commie. Superman was originally fighting capital. That is really the way it was originally conceived. And going on from there, yes, did Superman continue to represent such radical politics? Obviously, times changed. But he continued to represent a noble ideal, which is usually meant defending the downtrodden.
Right.
A typical interpretation of Superman would not have him with the ICE agents in MacArthur Park. It would have him fighting off the ICE agents in McCarthy Park. And that has not changed. This should really be made into a t-shirt. I cannot wait to watch an illegal alien absolutely ruin the plans of a billionaire. Who's Superman's arch nemesis? Lex Luthor, a billionaire. Today he'd be a Silicon Valley tech bro, right? I'm sure that's how they're interpreting him in the comics. And finally, this was pretty funny from Mike Nellis. MAGA folks are big mad about James Gunn saying Superman is an immigrant. Just wait until they hear Captain America's origin story. Nobody tell Daryl Cooper about this.
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah. So I am going to go see it tonight. But it is amazing how people have co-opted the image of Superman and made him out to be something that he absolutely never was. But when you look at this hysteria around what James Gunn said, it really does show you how people are being conditioned, trained, and brainwashed, and I would argue hypnotized by social media, just as Gunn says, to be mean, to be fascistic. Why would you get triggered by someone saying Superman is an immigrant and he represents kindness at a time when we need kindness? Like, what the fuck is wrong with you that you are triggered by something like that? I wasn't going to go see it in the theaters. I was going to wait to see it on HBO. Like a lot of people, I've kind of checked out on the superhero stuff. But yeah, if there's anyone with the talent to reinterpret Superman for this moment, and I do agree with James Gunn that especially for kids, we do need some kind of a heroic ideal like that in a world that's sorely lacking. Zack Snyder went completely off the rails with this very dark emo interpretation of Superman. That's not what the character is. If you can bring back some of that spirit of the Christopher Reeve Superman, which in many ways was representing an ideal at another moment when America, this is 1978, is feeling very down about itself. There's a pervasive cynicism. And if you go back and you watch the Richard Donner film, they're very self-aware about that, about dropping this idealistic character in the middle of the cynical 70s. And they made that work. If there's anyone who could make that work at this moment, it's James Gunn. He's very talented. He's a very good writer and director in this genre. So hopefully he pulls it off. We will see tonight.
Russell, we'll see tonight. Yeah, and there were people who, because the tweet of that mural went kind of viral, and there were some people who were saying, yeah, Superman would be with ICE, which is just, of course, absurd. Now, listen, you out there watching, you're not Superman, so you do not touch ICE. They will fuck your life up massively if you do that. So obviously, we do not encourage any violence with ICE officers, obviously. But the fact is, like, that mural could have been a comic square if you look at just the oppositional entities of Superman and the ICE agents, oppositional in a very literal sense that, yes, he was conceived literally as an illegal immigrant.
Right.
He was conceived as an immigrant. Like the Superman story is the immigrant story. That's a matter of
there have been
fact.
whole plot lines of Superman about his legal status.
Yeah, I really thought that was common enough knowledge, but I guess not. I used to give superhero tours when I lived in the city, and so I learned about the origin.
I didn't know you did that.
Yeah. There was a comic book tour that I used to guide.
No, I know there's a comic book tour. There was that guy. You worked for that guy? It's like one guy who had those tours, right?
Well, he worked for the guy I worked for. That guy's name is Paul. And he used to work in the industry. Has a pretty encyclopedic knowledge of that stuff. So I was like his understudy. When he couldn't make it, I would do it, and I would give an inferior version of the tour, obviously, because I didn't have the knowledge he did. But I learned the stuff, and I, pointed to the buildings and said the shit, right? So whatever, I earned my pay. But that's where I learned, and I assumed it was I was a young man when I learned that, but I assumed it was common knowledge. Of course, it makes perfect sense. It's obviously, even if you didn't know that, it's obviously an immigrant metaphor. If you know about when the Superman character came out, and the environment out of which he sprung, then yeah, it's the most obvious immigrant metaphor in the world. I think people, especially in that nerd space, are so accustomed to freaking out when, say, some woke director turned Star Wars into a political metaphor that wasn't there in the source material, and they think, well, you're bastardizing this intellectual property to push an agenda. That's not what this is. He is an immigrant. It's foundational to the Superman myth.
Yeah. The people with the nerd channels have absolutely no excuse because they know that.
Well, they know.
Well.
They have to know. Yes, of course.
Yes.
If I know, they know.
One of the, of course they know. One of the most common phrases in Superman comics narratives is his adopted home. They always invoke that phrase in his relationship to Earth, that Earth is his adopted home. Like it is core to the Superman mythos.
Yes, it is foundational. It's the most obvious thing in the world. And yeah, these people who clearly know this stuff better than I do. I mean, if I know that, certainly they do. Certainly they do. So it's a pretty desperate grift at this point.
Please clap.